Everybody.
Ozzy.
Don't break a hip.
Are we on Instagram?
Yeah.
We're on both. We're like,
Snap.
what's going on, everybody? You can see it's late here in Franklin, Pennsylvania. I'm sure you know where this is at.
Everyone knows where Franklin is.
Except Google.
All the cool kids do.
We're basically in BFE, but that's okay. So what we're going to do this evening is we're going to tackle a very common topic, and that's contest prep. There's all kinds of misinformation. You have what all the gurus are saying, what the experts are saying, and it's not that there's a black and white, because by no means is there. And that's the one thing you need to take away too, is that there's no absolute in this for the most part. So we're going to cover some common questions. This is going to be kind of like a roundtable discussion between us. If you have any questions on Instagram, just post them up and we'll get to them if we can. But we're going to go over some common questions, but we're also just going to shoot the shit at the same time. We're just going to talk amongst each other. Any topics that another brings up, we'll go over and get each other's opinion, experience between all of us. There's a lot of years here in this room.
Most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm the Otis here. Obviously, if you follow me, I've been competing for 25 years now. How long have you been in the industry, Cass?
Oh, man, I gotta say how old I am too. That's your
I'm
game,
not
man. Right? Oh, jeez. Well, probably 23 years. I would say.
23.
No, 25. Damn.
See, he's almost as old as I am. Mr. Miller, how long have you been in this industry?
Oh, now 16.
16.
16 years, yeah, something like that.
How's that? You're so much older than I am.
Well, okay, if you cut strength and conditioning, over 20.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
20 years.
20.
Yeah.
20 years.
Don't act like you're the young buck in here.
I'm the baby.
Here's the baby.
I'm the baby. I've only been in the industry for 16, so.
So, 25. In the industry, I've been in the industry right at 26 years. 16, so you can see lots of years and experience here. I've been a competitive bodybuilder since I was 17. I've competed in 100, and when I say hundreds, over about 100 shows. Adam, you've done a competition. Have you competed? You competed in bodybuilding, haven't you?
Yeah, for years.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
I did junior nationals. When I stepped on stage and I was in collegiates, and Jason Ho was a teen and was way
Okay.
bigger than me, and I was several years older. I thought it was time to get to a different sport. I was like, yeah, I saw Jason Ho was a teen, and I was doing collegiates, and he won the teens that year. And I weighed in 2 pounds heavier than him, and he looked 30 pounds bigger,
heavier.
than me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay,
The wake-up call?
Yeah, that's genetic. That's what it's going to take. That's not my deal, and I don't like to do sets higher than 5 anyway. So powerlifting it is.
Yeah, so
That's what I did.
Adam competes professionally in powerlifting at this point in time,
Yeah.
but still looks jacked.
Yeah.
You have coached many competitors,
Yep.
many competitors, professional IPU pros, and national, I'm sure, and amateurs, I'm sure as well.
Yeah, across the board. I mean,
Yeah.
I started 2011 training. That's when I first got into the pro circuit.
Okay.
Right. So.
2011.
Yep. So a good. Probably only lasted about 4 or 5 years before I was like, yeah, okay, did that, done that, got the T-shirt. Actually, I don't even think I got the T-shirt. But,
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole other animal when you're coaching competitors. From my perspective, being a competitor and coaching competitors, it's seen both sides of the story, right? I can empathize with my clients, but at the same time, I can also see how a lot of them are unrealistic at the same time. But what we're going to do today is cover some basic topics, and like I said, we'll start. I'm sure some randomness will come up, and we'll go over it. But these are some of the questions I've gotten through my DMs multiple times. So I'm going to touch on those first. The first one, I actually get a whole lot. And I get this more from females than I do males. Is how much is too much cardio? I'm sure everybody's seen people doing upwards of 3 hours a day, to as little as like nothing. I've had competitors not do any cardio all the way through prep. I've experienced both ends. I've done 6 days a week, an hour and a half up to 2 hours a day. I've done none for a competition. That was kind of a learning curve for me, not knowing any better, because I thought you had to do a lot of cardio to get in contest shape. And being realistic, a lot of people just have to do more than others. You know, you have to blame your parents for that, for somewhat, because the genetics is a massive factor when it comes to physique sports. At the end of the day, hard work pays off a lot, but still genetics are going to be king, regardless. But you have a lot of people that have superior genetics and a horrible work ethic, and I've seen many people, you know, basically put them in the ground because of that. I do not have the best genetics by any means. I don't have the worst genetics by any means, but I have good work ethic. So Cass, what have you seen as far as the extremes with cardio, and what's your opinion on how much is too much cardio in a prep?
Well, let's look at two goals, and let's say like how much is too much if you're doing everything right.
Yep.
And then how much is too much just too much, right? Like if you're not getting everything right. And in my experience, if you're actually hitting what you should be in training, you're getting the stimulus that you need to, like you should need very little, you know, through the majority of your contest prep. And as you're getting towards the end, I don't like to see anybody over 3 hours, maybe 4 hours max a week, right? Not a day.
But that's
Yeah.
max.
Yeah,
though.
that's
Like,
yeah, that would be max, right? I mean, definitely. So the goal is as little as possible, right?
Yeah.
Because like for me, when I look at the two options I have in terms of encouraging a calorie deficit and fat loss, right? When I look at cardio, where cardio comes with metabolic stress, right? Even low intensity does come with, you know, a little bit more neuro fatigue and whatnot. So overall, it's more of a stress than dieting, you could
Yeah.
say, right? So, you know, if there's a way for me to train and diet and have to do very little cardio, that's always the route that I'm going to take, right? And then, you know, for people that aren't you know, they're just not quite nailing it right. Either it's you know, their training's not quite right or whatever it may be. You know, I think sometimes people will actually see a benefit of doing more cardio, but not because the cardio is better. It's just because their training sucks so bad. They're either doing the wrong type of training or something at that point in time. And so then, like, in the short term, they might actually benefit from doing less training and more cardio because their training is inflaming, because they're doing either too metabolic training or giant sets or something like that. So sometimes those guys are better off backing off their volume and doing the cardio until they actually learn how to train and eat properly towards the end of a contest. They're ultimately not going to look as good, but then I would say, you know, that's where you're looking at, where you could get, you know, almost double those numbers, and you could say, well, that's acceptable in this case because you got to get on stage and you just got to do it somehow. And, you know, the better solution would be to learn how to train properly. But, you know, so just being realistic, because I'm not saying, like, you know, if you're fat going into a show, like, just stop doing your cardio, right? But if you're going to, you know, wise up for next time.
Yeah, I mean, be in a good spot when you start, right? You need to set your body up to be able to do a contest prep. So it's not like, because a lot of people, they don't actually start their work till it's like their mentality of, I'm going to make all my progress during prep. When in reality, it should have been almost like a periodization going into the prep, and it's smooth, and you peak at the contest. And, you know, it's how you periodize throughout the training year, in your off season, whatever you want to call it. I like calling it improvements. And you're improving. You prepare your body to handle the stressors of prep, because taking your body to an unnatural body fat level is a stress, right? It's not natural. Your body doesn't want to go there. So you have to do things sometimes and coax the body so it can handle this extreme stress when you get there. And the people who have been doing stupid shit all year long and during their prep are overly stressing their systems. Everything's inflamed constantly, and it's just a constant uphill battle to lose any fat. So then guess what? I gotta do more cardio. I gotta do more cardio because they're not getting results from anything else. So it's just creating that caloric deficit, but then that cascades and obviously other issues after the prep. You know, you may make it to stage, you may or may not look your best. But what have you seen, Adam, as far as, like, what's your experience as far as cardio when it comes to prep?
Cardio, you know, with even with a competitor, I think not only for like prep, just let's say transformation in general.
Yeah.
People are under this illusion that the cardio is a magic pill for fat loss, right? And some people like that they have to do it, that they have to do it. And like Cass said first at the start, you're trying to do that as minimal as possible. When it comes to, now there's some people who need some cardiovascular benefits too, right? Don't get me wrong about that. But there's not like somebody says, I start a fat loss program and immediately it goes to the magic pill of cardio. Even doctors do that with you have, diabetes, you need to start doing cardio. Get on the treadmill and walk. And I'm like, what's that going to do for blood sugar, right? So just the myth of the cardio, you have to do cardio. It's a magic pill for cardiovascular health and losing weight. Bullshit. Because you know what? You can do cardio for cardiovascular health, and you can do cardio to lose weight and not get a damn thing done. If diet, training, and all that is not appropriate.
No.
Because there's not a magic pill that fat loss equals cardiovascular exercise.
Yeah.
That's a bullshit.
Yeah, that's all the equation.
Yeah,
If
it's
you
not
want to lose fat,
always that.
You have to do cardio.
No, I heard Joel Jameson once say, with treadmills, ellipticals, and all that stuff, and he said if you gave me an 8 foot by 8 foot square, I could get somebody in shape, cardiovascularly, lose fat too. Really, and you're talking with certain the Tabatas and things like that, and body weight. But anyway, that's when you heard that, you're like that you can get somebody in good cardiovascular health in an 8 foot by 8 foot square on the floor, and you're going that right away took away that connection to the treadmill and the step mill and all this other stuff, right? Just immediately when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, cardio is always, it's always the typical machines of the treadmill, the elliptical, or the bike. But people are like, where's the parallel, or battle ropes, or there's all kinds of ways you can do cardio. Cardio is not the machine in front of a TV.
And even for heart health, what if you don't think your heart rate rises, or your blood pressure rises under a heavy set of leg press? Yeah, absolutely. That does something for your cardiovascular exercise.
But you have the mindset of people, they will say, and it's true to an extent about when you're training, your focus is not fat loss during training. It's building tissue, right?
Yeah.
Or setting the stages to build tissue. So people are getting lost in the context and application, in my opinion, on that aspect, because okay, well, I'm not doing my weight training for fat loss, so what else do I have to do fat loss? I guess I have to do cardio, right? So they get lost in that. Cardio is the fat loss, weight training is for muscle, and it's black and white with those two issues.
In school, we probably all heard the same maybe analogy at some point in school, in college, and when they use the analogy of, you ever seen a sprinter, and you ever seen a marathon runner, and you're in the fitness industry, which one do you want to look like? And you think of the type of cardio and think the training that a sprinter does versus the marathon runner. Now, nothing wrong if you want to look like a marathon runner, but if you're in physique sports, especially competition, what the hell, which one do you want to choose? You want to look like the sprinter with flaring quads as they sprint and delts and all that, right?
But the only thing I'll say with that is because people will listen that to doing hit top cardio.
Sorry, yeah.
So the sprinters I got to do hit cardio. They're not really equating it to weights sometimes. They do it to hit. Well, yes and no. I mean, hit. I'm not saying it doesn't have space by any means. I think it does. But at the same time, it's what someone's context. What are they relating?
And even with just the massive amounts of cardio people have to do. I think they have to do.
Context is important for what cardio is and in contest prep, and for those of you guys out there, the white belt thing is you should be doing your highest intensity cardio when your calories are the highest, which is usually going to be at the beginning of your prep, not the end of your prep. And you should be doing your lower intensity cardio when you're when your diet is the lowest, and you should not be out of shape in prep, let alone at the end of. If you're out of shape at the low of prep cardiovascularly, if you haven't done enough work to be in cardiovascular shape by that, then I don't know what you were. I don't know what you were prepping for, right?
Because a common thing I see, and I see it done often, and I'm not judging anybody. You choose your philosophy and you do what you do, but I see they got to get that last bit off, so they'll start doing fasted hit sessions. I see that very commonly done. And they'll do
hit sessions.
Or the common, let's do our fasted steady state, and then the hit session is done right after weight training. right? That's extremely common. And then when they get to that nudge, like I can't get any more off, but I still need to get leaner, then they'll move the hit to fasted and keep pushing. I need to push more. I need to push more and push more. What do you think is causing that stall out that people are relying on this type of protocol?
I mean, usually if you run into a plateau going into a prep, it's usually not the thing that you are immediately doing. It's usually the cumulative effect that's come up over that time. So you have to remember, like, your body has a certain capacity to burn and utilize fat. And as long as you're functioning within that, it's going to allow you to make a pretty massive change over time if you're actually promoting a good quality training stimulus, because that is going to encourage your body to be okay with all of this metabolic shift, and if you're getting plenty of micronutrients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the more of those like pillars that you need from a foundational health perspective and a metabolism perspective, the more of those that kind of fall as you're going through prep, either because your nutrient quality isn't there, you're not quite getting the training, or you either through over expenditure or over dieting are jumping out of your capacity to actually lose body fat to just kind of losing weight. That's when your body's really going to get into the panic mode, because your body's pretty okay with giving up fat when a training stimulus is accompanied with it, right? Yeah. But when you exceed that, and then the body's got to start giving up amino acids and glucose because you're putting yourself in either an excessive deficit for some way, shape, or form, it's going to adapt to that, and it's going to adapt to that fast, right? Which is good, or we would have died out as a species, years and years and years ago, right? So, as a competitor, as an athlete, you have to respect the process, the work, and the time. And that's the thing I think that most people won't, is they're willing to work hard. And I'm guilty of this myself. It's like one of the hardest things to do is to do the marathon and not the sprint. Everybody's willing to do the sprint, for the most part, is to be honest with yourself and the amount of time and the patience that it's going to take you to get in shape based off of your genetics and how your body responds and whatever your current ability is to use fat. Like if you have gotten healthy, if you have prepped the prep or whatever you want to call it beforehand, your capacity to use fat, meaning the deficit that you can tolerate, is going to be greater. But if you just jump into prep and you jump into a deficit, already you're starting to cut those pillars off, and it's just a matter of time before you're going to reach that point where the body's going to have to adapt, right? In some way, shape, or form.
That's a great point, because that's a good segue into the second question I get a lot, because I always get asked about what's your opinion on adaptive metabolisms. So when someone says that, what they're meaning is you'll have somebody that can eat a very high caloric intake in their off season, and they stay pretty lean, getting upwards of 4,000 or 5,000 calories, and their body fat stays in a really good spot. But when they start dieting down for a prep, they have to get to extremely low levels of calories to get in condition. So it's like I can get up to 5,000 and stay really lean, but I have to go down to 1,500, 2,000 to get into stage shape. So that's what people are meaning when they say, what if you have an adaptive metabolism? So what I see with people is, say you start a caloric cut by 500 calories, right? And everything's grooving, everything's good, and then they hit this wall. You make a change, and then within a week, they basically adapt really, really quick, and then progress stalls again. So basically every time you're making a change, their body adapts really fast, and then no changes. You make a change again, and it's just a constant. So people get into the more work, less calories, more work, less calories, and it's just that kind of goes all the way into prep, and then they have to eat 1,300 calories, right, to get ready for that. This is a trick one. This has been a trick one for me coming up as a coach, right, because I've hit this many times with clients. Even though we've spent a good majority of a year or more preparing their body to do this, everything's good, biometrics are good, markers, all these things are in a good spot, and then this happens. Have you seen that, Adam, before? People having those very adaptive,
Oh yeah, absolutely. You see that quite a bit, and then just like as we're all learning and everything too is, when you see this occurring, and you're trying to think, is the tweak in the diet and the tweak in the training. It's got to match, and then you're also trying to figure out where you need to go, get that, and that's the whole trick. You see it all the time. And what is a common training? Sometimes not even an adjustment to the training. It is literally more. It's not even adjustment to the training except adding like more volume, right? Just whatever you're currently doing, do more cardio, and bring the food down. That's the king, but if you really know what you're doing and you see that plateau, you may have to change the training protocol entirely with the diet. How many people, Alan, you think when you prep them and you look at their program 16 or 12 weeks out, and you look at it at 6 or 7 weeks out, and you see all these diet changes and all the cardio added, but the training stayed the same, unless they just added more sets or something, or they just increased the reps. Yeah. That was it, right? I wish it was that simple.
Or the goal is, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, to maintain strength. So, or continue to try to set PRs going through a prep. I think trying to maintain your strength is a good thing, for sure. Your strength should not be, obviously, in 3 weeks' time, completely dropping by 30 or 40%. That's a red flag to me. What's your opinion on the adaptive metabolism, Cass?
So, if you look at people when they're trying to gain muscle, they're training hard for a specific effect, and then they tend to see that taper off. So they'll be running in a calorie excess, and all of a sudden that will stop working. The same thing happens in a calorie deficit when we're focusing on fat loss, and the answer to both is periodization, because when we look at a training stimulus, we're stimulating a process, and when we're using training, we're stimulating a process that's either going to use extra fuel, partition extra fuel. So maybe my process is a little bit more hypertrophy based, right? And so I'm expending energy like repairing muscle, maybe running extra protein synthesis, or maybe I'm partitioning more glucose and increasing my ability to utilize fat or whatever. But all of those mechanisms, like you can only tick that box so much before it starts to taper down. So if you're working in a calorie deficit, when we look at the metabolic responses that happen to training, they happen even faster, right, out of necessity. So if you're trying to do the same one trick pony throughout your protocol, you're going to see these massive drops, and then you're just going to have to keep adapting lower and lower and lower, because you're losing what the metabolic benefit was of that training. Maybe you will maintain strength, because you can maintain neurological efficiency and maintain muscle mass at much less of a training stimulus than you can build muscle mass, or get changes in your metabolism. So I think when you look at periodization right now, and the way it is in the industry is, well, one, it's not individualized like outside of N1 is just not, right? I mean, maybe people individualize exercises, or they think like, okay, but like undulating training, yeah, that's like just the tip of the iceberg on the power that you have to be able to shift how you can use food, the amount of macros that you can use, and maintain a much higher metabolism while you are utilizing higher calories, like going into a show. It doesn't mean you can use a calorie excess. It just means that you don't have to keep dropping and dropping and dropping at the same rate. You're still going to have to drop, but if you're constantly changing the stimulus, you're constantly switching to something else that now has the potential to have a greater metabolic demand and also a greater impact on your physique, right? Because the goal is not, okay, it's 12 weeks out, whatever I got for muscle and whatever I look like under this, like dress of blubber, that's what I got, right? And let's just cut this off. A lot of people can grow into a show. A lot of people can, sculpt into a show, right? They can bring up a priority body part or whatever it may be. And, periodization gives you the power to be able to do that efficiently. When you don't use that, you don't have any of those tools, because you're just going to end up depleting everything over time. And that's where, genetics make a bigger difference, because it's really about who's got the genes to survive that type of training. Because that's where you really see, when you go to the extremes, that's where the genetic outliers kind of get the biggest free pass, because it's either the guys that got the best genes, or they have the best reaction to drugs, or whatever it may be, that's like, what, may not be good for their health, but they can run on essentially what would seem like an unlivable amount of calories and drugs, right, and make it into a show and still look good. Whereas another person does that, and they might suffer through the exact same calories and whatever, and their body just doesn't respond in the same way physiologically, right? Yeah. So really, that's an inevitable process. You have to remember that most of the obstacles that we have in fitness are safeguards by our body. It's actually healthy biology, because stepping on stage is not a natural thing that we are meant to do. And so what we have to do is we have to take homage and not abuse the systems that we have in place and expect our body to like reward us with a positive physiological response, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. Because everybody always thinks, you know, because like a lot of coaches, they just do nutrition and cardio. They don't do anything with the training that their clients are doing. A lot of them honestly probably don't know. It's not their fault. They're just not educated, so they're just the nutrition guy and the cardio guy. But if they're not asking the client, at least asking them what they're doing, what type of training they're doing, or have any suggestions to manipulate that factor, that's still a massive variable that you can manipulate to make bigger changes. You know, a lot of clients don't fit well with me because they want me to be their prep coach and do their nutrition and cardio, but when it comes to me doing their training, they like, no, I like how I train. Well, I'm like, sorry, but they all need to work together, and then, you know, I honestly will pass on them because it's just a headache for me to try to deal with that. I can't just, I don't do that anymore. If somebody comes to me and they just want nutrition for prep, I stop. I stopped doing that 2 years ago. And then obviously with Cass and them, I've learned even better skills to help prep people into shows. Myself being one of them. So
I think Joey can speak on this from a background similar to myself, in that when you have like these metabolic adaptations that are occurring, you also simultaneously tend to have health markers that are kind of dominoing down, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I don't know, maybe you want to lighten up on that.
Yeah, I mean, from a hormonal standpoint, for sure. I mean, you've got, when cortisol goes up, it starts to like nullify your thyroid, starts to invalidate the activity of your thyroid, that kind of stuff you're talking about. Yeah, so you have, especially like, I mean, from an adrenal hormone standpoint, like if you've got an increase in aldosterone, those types of things will change like your water distribution in your body, and you basically will start to look watery and inflamed, and you know, your weight won't change much, and you know, so there's a lot of stuff that we might even see as like adaptive metabolism, whereas like it's not really that the metabolism is adapting, it's just that your body's not cooperating with you anymore because you're in a completely stressed out state, and you're not respecting like your body's ability to heal, or you know, you're not giving your body enough calories even to like carry out its basic metabolic functions that it needs to do.
So they're under recovering.
So so a lot of that is under recovery too, you know.
So going back to the last one, like for you guys watching this, any calorie excess that is below what you can facilitate with body fat utilization is going to require some increase in stress response. So in order to get blood sugar higher, in order to get amino acids available to use for fuel, right? Those happen in stressed responses, right? Which is why those hormones go up in training when we have a higher demand of fuel, right? So if you push yourself with too much of a deficit because of whatever reason, and you push it too far, you're going to get like, not only do you going to get like negative adaptations over time, but understand that like you are constantly putting yourself in a position of stress, right? That is not giving you a positive outcome, right? Training stress comes with a positive outcome if we recover, right? Every other stress just takes away from recovery, right? So it literally takes you out, like it takes away the benefit of the very tools that you're trying to use to get better, because you know you need to recover to be able to train more, to be able to train more frequently, to be able to stimulate things more often. And so if you get greedy, and I would say that's like the biggest fail in physique sports, right?
Greedy.
Just people get greedy, whether it's muscle gain or fat loss. They get greedy, right? They do too much of an excess, too much of a deficit. They stay in a training stimulus too long, and that's what that's what really puts you in the plateau, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to these guys yesterday about that, and Joey about me going in the year I won my pro card, and my first national show that year, I did that exact thing. I got greedy because I had the mindset of this is my shot at the pro card, so I need to do more. And my body was so freaking stressed out. No matter the little amount of food that I was eating, the excessive amount of cardio I was doing, I was not losing any fat. So the whole calories in, calories out shit is crap when it comes to this. You're right? That's why we talk about health is a big part of the whole system working as a unit so you can oxidize fat properly. So when you're in this excessive stressed out state, cortisol levels are all jacked up. And obviously, that's going to throw off insulin because your blood sugar gets thrown off. So all these cascading effects that happen is going to basically make your body go into more of a survival mode, down-regulate things even more, and you're going to stall out. I stalled out. So guess what? I went from 6 days a week training, 7 days a week of cardio, to 4 days a week of training and 2 days a week of cardio, increased my calories, and my body like metamorphosized and changed and did a 180 in 6 weeks. It didn't take a whole lot. Just because I got out of my own head and quit doing the stupid stuff and stopped being greedy, with my body and what it was actually capable of. And this was later in my career, right? This is after 20 years of training, stuff I know I shouldn't have done. And you guys may hit that point. So just be cautious of self-sabotage and getting in your way, because we always want to push harder and push harder and push harder. There are times that you need to pull things back and you will actually elicit a better response. That's where having the second educated eye can really, really help with these things. So with that, something I'm actually getting a little bit more common question is, because people obviously, we talked about the whole progressive overload, people want to set PRs and their strength levels maintaining throughout prep. So, like Adam, I'll throw this at you. When do you think someone should stop pushing that failure point in training? Like, those multiple sets to failure.
Okay. And in a competition prep?
Yeah, in contest prep.
See, my mind goes to periodization, right? Like sometimes I think people need to understand that you can have certain phases in training where you're actually not pushing to failure. You're actually on purpose leaving reps in the tank. So,
or it's the type of failure, right?
Yeah, it's the type of failure, right? There's a difference in failure with drop sets, right? Doing drop sets versus just taking one set completely beyond where you want to go. A forced weight failure, when actually doing like a leg extension where you can't move it, to where you're actually having somebody help you get extended reps, like helping you move the weight, things like that. Those are all different types of failure. So I'll tell you what, one thing is when you're pushing the sets to failure, and when food gets really low, there's not many times you want to go to failure.
Yeah.
Like complete failure, especially when
because the recovery is what you have to.
Right. The further you go into failure, the further you're going to extend recovery. The more food you're going to need. Right. It all just depends, But that's one thing that you just see in competition prep. When calories are that low and just people pushing to failure. It just becomes a mark for everyone when calories are that low that it's just going to cause more harm.
But again, it's like what like you're talking about with hormones and stuff, right? That's part of a recovery process. Right, and if you're in that stressed out state, cortisol's up and whatnot, and then you're pushing the failure, so adding more and more stress on your body.
Well, especially when you're in like a calorie deficit, right? And you're sitting there pushing to failure, and you're basically doubling up on your neural fatigue, and then you're putting your body in a more stressed out state, and you're actually increasing the amount of inflammation that you're gonna have to heal after every session. And so, this stuff is all like, it's going to have an impact on your hormonal state. And ultimately your recovery. So, it's all going to, you can probably push more to failure potentially earlier in your prep when you have like more calories and when you want to actually see an adaptation, that would be in line with like as much volume and the effort that you're putting into it, but potentially like further down, you might want to start tapering your efforts, to basically keep it lined up with, and monitoring kind of where your body's at, where your recovery's at, what symptoms are you looking at, how's your digestion, how's your sleep, and if those things start falling apart, like there's a lot of different ways that you can back off the intensiveness of your training, including maybe taking less sets to failure, as a thing.
Alan, the way that we program it in one, and Cass and I talk about this a lot, and with Cody and Joey, there are certain times, and even in one when we program, when we do some things that are aggressive, and they're on the extremes occasionally, and occasionally like cross the streams, like, hey, we are intentionally taking food and calories low, and we are going to maybe push failure a little bit, maybe for like a depletion, like maybe one of our systemic phases of training, and we're not feeding it enough, which is an extreme. And yes, we do that occasionally. And guess what? The period when we talk about it and we teach it, we're going, this is an extreme that you're using for a very short period. And when we say very short, we're not saying, the last 4 weeks. We're going, no, this is like maybe a 7 to 10 day thing. And then what we go is, when we look at how people are doing their competition preps, you're going, wow, what we would say is probably a healthy way to do this is for 7 to 10 days, and you've been doing it for 7 to 10 weeks.
Yep.
That's a problem.
Yep.
You know, and we talk about that all the time. And sometimes the things that we would say is an extreme, and it's like this. We know this isn't that healthy. You cannot do it that long. People do whole phases and months of stuff like that.
Yep.
You know, even in the just normal gym population too.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
What's your experience with that, Cass? On the failure?
I'm gonna play part devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Just because I know I'll get a huge reaction out of Adam when I say this, right?
It's gonna piss me
Right.
off.
So yeah,
You're
we got macaroons, right?
You're gonna say something
Get them
about the
thrown at
squat
me,
rack,
right?
or
Yeah, right.
don't curl in the squat rack. Don't do that.
It depends. Right. Okay. Well, it does, right? So like Adam had a really good point when he was talking about like it depends on the type of failure you're going for, right? Which brings in the periodization, because obviously if your programming is right and your periodization is right, well you will be changing the type of failure that you are going to, and you'll obviously be achieving that appropriate in program design. But in contest prep, I'm gonna say that you could argue the case that people should actually train to failure more, with the context of understanding that sets to failure count as more volume. So you could exchange fewer total sets for higher numbers of sets in certain stimulus to be able to get more out of less, to maybe help the nervous system in a metabolic phase, or just expend less total calories while still getting a great nutrient partitioning effect, so that you get more like passive calorie burning rather than high intensity calorie burning in the workout. So you could make the argument that failure used appropriately when accounting for total volume and the type of macronutrients that you are using, like higher intensity work or like higher effort work, could be a tool to get by with less volume. But that's not what people do. They do, well, if a little is less, more should be better, right? So they add more failure on top of the number of sets that they're already doing, rather than saying, okay, if intensity is going up, volume can go down, you know. And but in this term intensity, we're meaning output, not like, you know, percent of 1 RM.
Yeah, call that intensiveness.
Yeah, intensity. Yeah, metabolic intensity, right? Effort-based stuff, whatever the heck you want to call it, right? So nobody has intensity at the end of contest.
Well, I think the problem is people that they the way they calculate volume is wrong. So like
That's
people
still right.
people don't take, I don't think they take failure into account when they calculate volume.
Yeah.
So like if you have 4 sets, so you have 4 sets, and one person's doing 1 set to failure, but another person is doing 3 of those sets to failure, even though it's still 4 sets total, the person with 3 sets to failure is significantly more volume than the 1 set to failure. But people are just looking at the 4 sets
Depending
within that
on
exercise.
depending on the stimulus, that may be more than double the volume.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah, yes.
right? Like, you
Yeah,
know.
so if you have to take that into account as volume. It's not just the numbers thing of sets reps. Like that's the be all end all of calculating your volume. You know, and that's where I think people are missing the boat, so to speak, with that. But I agree.
And I will say this is especially true in people with a significant amount of muscle mass. Like we had this discussion about Big Rami's prep like a few years ago, and how we watched his physique change. And like, man, for a guy with that much muscle tissue, like there are just certain things that you got to do different, because the amount of systemic, you know, metabolites and fatigue and whatnot that you can make when you just got that much tissue on your body, that's way different than if you're a 105-pound bikini competitor, right? Like the amount of stuff, like, because you got to remember, if you put an extra 50 pounds of muscle on your frame, your liver and your kidneys and stuff did not grow proportionately. I hope, right?
That would
So,
be,
right?
That would
I
be
hope,
a very
right?
different look.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So,
At least
you
you're
know,
just missing a myostatin gene.
yeah, right. You know,
That's wrong, man.
And every rep is just
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're that person, you know you're that person.
Yeah.
You know.
But also too, when you say the big guys, real big guys, and really capable within their workouts of just causing that much trauma, right?
And when we say really big, we mean like really big, muscular, a lot of contractile tissue, not big, bloated, and full of fluid.
No, we say like really big. We're like, red hair, 5'8", 220 from Southeast Missouri.
The better your execution, the better your execution, the more
Yeah.
fibers you're going to attack.
Yeah, but
I'm not big, man. I mean, I'm like very middle ground when it comes to size.
No,
Your
you're big.
arms are so small, you're easy to test.
You're big. We weigh around the same. You're big,
There you go.
right? But then but the bigger, like how much time it will take to recover and drop any form of inflammation especially the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Like we talk about some of those big guys that come in and you're going, oh, they're holding water in their quads or something like that, and they're just like Rami, just that big a guy, right? Oh, by the way, some of those guys, their body fat is so low. You're like, water, or you mean just like they're inflamed, like everything is so screwed up at the end of their prep, right? Like a guy like Rami with that amount of muscle mass and that much tissue, how much time it would take to actually let the body like drain inflammation and get rid of all the stress from the prep. It's going to take weeks. It's like in powerlifting, the big time squatters, they don't squat heavy at 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out. They're that strong and need that much time to recover from their heavy ass training going into the meet. It's almost the same for the biggest guy. It's like Rami needs to start dialing back. Those big guys need more time to dial it down and taper things down for the competition stage.
But I don't think that bodybuilding coaching is that like dialed in, at least yet, especially on the big, like, so, you think Big Rami's not like, that he's avoiding training to failure necessarily? Like, I think he's probably
I think he's doing too much.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that
I think bodybuilding will. I mean, I don't know if that sport is capable of evolving out of that, like outwork.
Yeah.
Right. There are a few very smart guys that have realized that working smarter and harder is what you should say, right?
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, you reach a certain point where like you've attained a certain physique and a level like where your hard work is now put in, and now it actually becomes easy to work too hard, right? Like that's not the thing that's holding you back, right? Especially if you're gifted. Usually the gifted guys, like, unless you're super lazy, you really are trying to manage like this beautiful genetic physique that you've been given and be like, man, how do I bring this in and like just not screw it up, right? Is more of the case, right? I mean, you look at some of these, the guys that have just come in with freakish amounts of muscle, and how do they always lose? It's never size. What is it? It's always conditioning,
Yeah.
right?
Conditioning,
It
yeah.
always is conditioning. It's the consistent challenge over and over. Like Rolly's another good example. Like so much muscle mass.
So
right?
much muscle mass.
So much muscle mass. How easy it is for him to overtrain from an aesthetic perspective going into a show, right? It's so easy. Because when you have that much muscle mass, you get such a bigger gun than everybody else.
Yeah.
Just that simple, right? Just
Yeah. Yeah.
like you're just firing different ammunition, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to push your body to the point where all of a sudden you're going to be holding too much water on stage. You're just going to be too much flamed, and that's just the reality of it, right? So now there's a lot of people that are on the opposite side of that spectrum, right? Like if you're the person that struggles to gain a pound of muscle, you probably don't have to worry as hard about this, right? But all of these things are still important because for you, recovery might be important for you to quote unquote like try and grow a little into the show, or these other guys are just trying like, it's like, all right, man, I have to do enough work to get in shape without becoming overly inflamed, right? Because for them, maybe they're the exemption to the rule. Maybe they could just train like twice a week and do 18 hours of cardio, like low intensity cardio a week, and might come in shredded, right? That's an extreme example, but you could argue that like for some of them,
100%.
like, man, at a certain point, it's like, man, they'd be better off just like almost just dieting and resting. Like, man, put them in a coma for a week before the show, right?
Yeah, because everybody's mindset is to push hard all the way through the competition and do cardio all the way up until 2 days out. Why? I mean, I honestly see, and I'll put that, I see zero benefit. I've never, ever have a client doing cardio that close to a show because everything should be completely done by that point. Their body should be well rested, and we're just feeding it at this point to make it look good. No inflammation, no this and that. Because people are like, don't train this, or don't change this, don't change that. push hard with your training all the way up until a week. This is what got you here, whatever. And then also at the same time, they're still at that genetic end. And then also, obviously, PEDs are coming into play, which saves a lot of people at the same time. Just because you're seeing these people look good on stage and what, it still doesn't mean there's not maybe a more optimal or better way to do it. Okay? Because I have other people that are doing the same approach and they are struggling to look good on stage because they're trying to mimic these outliers.
Anybody can get lucky once.
Yeah, if you're good, not that you will nail it 100% every time you're on stage, but you still should look pretty damn good every time you're on stage. It should not be this night and day shift every time. I look good almost every show I've done for 20 years. Then I did that one shit show. It looked horrible. Learned my lesson, and then went back to what I know, and then it worked.
So going back to the question, then, like, what from your guys' opinion, like what are some guidelines for a competitor that would let them know how many sets they should be taking to failure, or if they should not be going to failure, or, you know, if they're safe to take more sets to failure and that's a good idea for them, or if they should kind of take a phase and not go that far?
You should learn the fucking program. Period.
Exactly.
It's the fuck. That's the answer.
Yeah.
You know, and it's gonna take more than reading a goddamn book, because we all did that through school and read everything, and we still sat there and went, "Yeah, I'm still kind of lost." Yeah. You had to it took years of going to seminars and shit and putting things together and listening to people, you know, and actually listening to people sometimes argue, and then you're really going, well, I got to figure that out too now, because you have two authorities arguing, and you got to pick that apart too, right? But it comes down to learning to fucking program.
Sure.
Bottom line, bodybuilding needs to learn to fucking program.
Bodybuilding wants to be black and white.
Yeah. Bodybuilding still believes there's bodybuilding fucking workouts. I've never read of a bodybuilding fucking workout ever, by the way. What the fuck is that? I want to do a bodybuilding workout. What the fuck is a bodybuilding workout? Yeah. Oh, you mean a body part split? Yeah. Wrong book, asshole. Yeah, get out of the magazines. But back then, that's all there was, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm out of macaroons. Shit. Yeah, but that's right. Like, when you talk about it, that's another soapbox, Alan. It's another soapbox. Bodybuilding program. You know.
Well, it's like heaven forbid if you put arms on quad day. If you train your biceps on quad.
Oh my God! Arms on quad day? Who does that? My God! Or a half body split? Who the fuck would do a half body split? God forbid you would actually train your upper body and lower body in the same day. You might never get in shape because it's not Ronnie Coleman Unbelievable's workout or Blood and Guts Dorian Yates, which, by the way, you better watch if you're following Alan. If you don't know what those are, you probably need to just unfollow. Sorry. But that's right? You know, like how many clients of yours, Alan, when you look at it, you take them over and you're going, like, they have an arm day. Right, just an arm day. Yeah. You know, now maybe certain phases you want to bring it up.
Sure, if it's a special
event. Right, yeah, but you're going, how many clients are really doing like 5 days a week? What'd you do on Monday? Chest.
Well, it's even I see that even with females, right? Like a female should train pushing, chest, whatever you want to call it. They should never have a chest day.
No, if you do,
that's never a standalone.
Well, they usually have one. And that's the day they go to the surgeon. But right.
And I agree with that 100%. But it's look at these things, because it's not like if we can always, people always ask the question too with the whole male-female thing, right? Should females train different than guys? For, you know, and getting ready for prep or whatever. What's your opinion on that when people throw that subject out there?
Well, I think everybody should train different. Yeah. So that's females, guys, you know, she-males, gals, guys, whatever, right? Red, blue, green, you name it, right? I think you're doing a disservice if you put yourself in any group, and that includes, I'm a competitor, so I'm going to train like a competitor. So I mean that's where I stand, right? You know, because I mean there's plenty of dudes walking around with chick level hormones and vice versa, and you know, and there's plenty of people that have a whole host of genetic variations and stuff going on, and we're all subject to time, meaning that what works for me right now may not be the same thing as last year. It may not be the same thing as next month. So we're not just different individuals. We're different within ourselves in the context of time. So if you put yourself in a group, you're pretty much guaranteeing yourself that like there's a 99.99% chance this doesn't actually fit me right now. Yeah. Right? Because what are the odds of all of the things that are going on? What are the odds that you're going to guess what you need at that point in time.
Yeah. I mean,
You know, and real quick on when Cody loves when I talk about this, but people need to understand, and I don't care what you have behind your name, PhD, whatever you have. 4 sets of 10 for Cassim, 4 sets of 10 for Alan, 4 sets of 10 for Joey, 4 sets of 10 for me could possibly be 4 different training stimulants. I mean, 4 different things, because we're all 4 different individuals. You know, so if somebody's telling you high reps or low reps make you grow, and there's a big argument in academia right now. Which one's right? Yes, they're both fucking right.
Yep.
You know, and there are some people out there who can do sets of 10, and their 1 rep max will go up, and some people that won't do it. You know, so everybody, like, what's the hypertrophy rep range? It depends. 100%. Oh, it's 8 to 12. You're full of shit. You're full of shit. Your 8s are different than my 8s. 100%. You know, so that's totally, it's just a hogwash. You know, you need to understand how your client works, how you work, and figure that shit out. That's period. 4 sets of 10 means 2 different things. If there's a billion people in the world, it's a billion different fucking things.
All right, so if I can reel this back into Joey's original question, which was, how do you know how many sets you should train to failure?
Because you don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, right? So, it depends, right? So, look, that's a loaded question. Like, we don't have time to dig into all of the physiology, right? I mean, we teach that stuff over hours and hours and hours of course content. And then, you know, sometimes, you know, people still need to put that into practice and apply it for a good amount of time before they really, really are able to evaluate that. They get much better, right? But there is a combination of the science and the art there, because you have to be able to see the signs and read the biofeedback until we get to the point where we have devices that are reliable, right? Technology still hasn't gotten to the point where we can just be like, your watch says do 7 sets today, right? 2 of them to failure, please. Right? Yeah.
oh shit, my HRV is 49. I gotta take the week off.
Or my HRV is 49, and that means I can't train, and I
Can't
took
do
5 days.
anything.
I can't do anything.
Right.
Maybe this thing
Stay
might
in bed.
be wrong.
And it's not to say HRV doesn't have
Yeah.
its place, okay? Because it
HRV
absolutely does.
Yes.
But again, it's context with this
Yeah.
To the
everything that you
individual.
measure.
You know what the worst thing is for your HRV score?
What's that?
Your HRV score.
I
Yes. Yeah.
when that first came out, I would take that every morning. It wasn't what it was supposed to be. It stressed me out, so I fucking threw my Oura ring out.
Yeah.
But some people are fine with that, and it doesn't affect them. It affected me 100% because I'm a perfectionist in a sense, especially because I'm still trying to be competitive, and it just frustrated the piss out of me. So I don't know the last time I took my HRV. I still do like my waking heart rate and stuff on occasion, or blood glucose and whatever. Those things I think are cool. It doesn't stress me out. I love playing with those things. It's not for everybody.
I'm still going to try and answer that question.
Yeah.
So what do we follow?
We got a lot of soapboxes, boys.
But
to
I
cover.
ask because a lot of people glorify
Yeah.
like people like Branch Warren and stuff, and you know that are training. The intensity is just insane, and they're tearing muscles and wear it like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
It's like, but I don't think that you're suggesting that people just should not take their sets to failure because
Yeah.
they're too stressful either. So I mean,
No.
you know,
Yeah.
that's why I'm
I
asking.
mean,
because I think
so
people-
so without knowing with knowing
Yeah.
zero of the physiology, right? Here are the things that should be the not so common sense, right? Is one, you should be making improvements. You know,
Yeah.
through whatever stimulus you're using, you should be improving in the facet of that training. If that's a metabolic stimulus, well, then maybe you should be improving in the amount of density or the amount of total work that you can tolerate, right? You should be seeing improvements in your physique right there. It's a physique competition. If you're doing something and it's not working, what's the definition of continuing to do the same thing?
This seems
right?
like it's just common sense stuff, but this
Yeah.
really happens.
Yeah,
This
right?
really
so,
happens.
I mean, yeah, right? Okay, I mean, so, and the thing is to understand this is a context of both the synergy of failure and volume. So it's the sum of those things, right? Okay, and then we should be looking at basic health markers, right? So it's like, okay, like how is my sleep? How is my digestion? How is my, my energy and my mood and those type of things, right? Just simple things that you can contract and consistently rely on, right? So if you're prepping for anything, right, and you are not tracking those things like performance, basic health markers, right, and progress towards your goal, right, well, then you have no business like expecting any sort of result, right? I mean, that's, you know, that's like driving without holding onto the steering wheel. So the thing to look with that would be like, okay, based off of that, if I am not getting to where I need to be, something needs to be changing in my training. And it could be, if especially if I'm seeing issues with my health impact, that's probably a sign that either it's too much volume or too little food or too much failure. Like it's going to be some combination of those. You can't necessarily point it at one and be like, it was the failure sets, not the other 52 that I did. It was that one set to failure. Bad. All right, if I just take out that one, 51 sets will be fine. Right? No, that's not gonna. It's the sum of those. But you can understand that that's an equation. You have total volume. Failure amplifies that, and then I have my food, and those two things provided with everything else that I'm doing for recovery, that's an equation I constantly have to be balancing. And if it looks like I'm off on one side, then I need to do something to rebalance that. I need to either add recovery in some way, whether that's rest, food, or decrease stress, whether that's lifestyle or training or both, right? And that without getting into the science, that's the best answer you're gonna get. But it's pretty damn simple if you just track the most basic stuff and use a little common sense.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, in reality, this is really complex stuff, but it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
That could be probably a discussion in and of itself.
That's
Yeah,
a discussion.
right?
Oh, shit.
I mean, most of this stuff can be its own topic. It can be
Yeah.
2-hour-long videos, right? So obviously, we're trying to generalize as much as possible. All right, because let's shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
So this.
5 minutes left on
Yeah.
Instagram.
All right, so regularity bowel movements. How many people get people complain they're constipated? I mean, there gets to a point where, and that's like the most common thing with bodybuilders, is constipated. And if they have a bowel movement the morning of a show, it's like heaven, right? Oh my God, it's the best thing ever. I'm ready to step on stage because it happens all the time. I mean, obviously, I have my opinions. Like Adam, what would you say is a cause of that?
When we're constipated, what's not a cause of that in most people's shitty programs, right?
Well, actually, they would not be shitty.
They would not be shitting.
They would be shitless programs.
You know, but then you say, my head just goes, yeah, take 3 days off of training and eat something, and drink something. Just to lower stress, right?
Stress, obviously,
Yeah,
like, that's
absolutely.
obviously like the go-to. But like, how would you say that, Cass? Like, I mean, obviously, people are going to like, well, do I need a supplement? Do I need to add maybe a fiber? I mean, obviously, because food does get lower, and you're losing some micronutrients, and you're going to lose fiber to an extent. It could be as simple as adding a quality fiber source, right?
Well, okay, let's see if we can cover poop very fast, right? So, all right, so let's start with this. The topic you just brought. Should or shouldn't you add fiber, right?
Yep.
So let's look at fiber adds stool volume, right? But it doesn't necessarily increase motility. So the thing with fiber is you only add fiber if your stools are like liquidy, loose, or like there's excess moisture in them. If you are constipated and you are shitting like dry, hard rabbit turds, right? So go look at my Instagram story and you will see what your eventual bowel movement looks like, right? It'll be a log with some hard brock on the side, right? So adding fiber is not going to help a dehydrated digestive system, right? So fiber is a solution when we need volume added into a moist, like a water retaining digestive system, not a dehydrated digestive system, right? So when you see that the stool is very hard and dry, that is a sign that stuff is staying in the colon too long, and basically it's just trying to pull everything out of your literal shit as possible. So you could argue at this point, physiologically, that if you get to that point of constipation, that you are eating your own shit. You are just not doing it through this hole, right? Which is only slightly better, right? You're sucking the turd dry.
You suck the turd
right?
dry.
So what you need to do then is you need to promote things that are going to be restorative to your system, usually in the form of micronutrients or essentially calories. So your body's going to do that when it senses that it is very low in essential nutrients, or water, right? It's just simple hydration at that standpoint, right? And so that's what the things that you need to correct, so that then the motility of the bowel will open back up and the fluid will be able to go back in, back in the other direction. It's very dangerous towards contest prep, because when we're absorbing everything, that means everything our body is trying to get rid of is also being pulled back in. And that means our liver has to process it again. And a lot of you guys have enough things for your liver to process at that point in time that you don't need to be reprocessing your shit twice, right?
It's what
Quick point, guys. The Instagram is obviously going to cut us off here soon.
Should we switch accounts?
So we're going to switch over to account, but this is also going to be on a YouTube channel too. So I'll post when this whole thing's up. Okay. So we're going to switch to a new channel. They probably just cut it off, but it's okay.
This one's still rolling.
But we're still rolling.
Okay. We'll just pause this one.
So
and if you're